Hi everyone, whatever the time it is for you. Thus I'm very pleased to present you a research which was conducted in complement to Nicolas Pichot's thesis and in collaboration with Eric Bonetto, who is performing a postdoc at INSIAM, which is the Institute on Creativity and Innovation in Aix-en-Provence, in Aix-Marseille. Thus, we refer to some definitions, such as the ones that were proposed by Roberts, who defined serendipity as an accidental discovery of something what was not solved after. This was already evoked by Todd. Todd also evoked the Velcro invention, which is based on a discovery made by Georges de Mestral, and which was based on the observation of burdock fruits that were attached to his clothes. And Georges de Mestral encountered difficulties for removing these burdock fruits from his clothes, and it gave him the ideas that are underlying his invention. Roberts also defines pseudo-serendipity, which refers to accidental discoveries of ways to achieve a sought after goal. And thus, this is related directly to knowledge, problem solving, cognitive processes, and we can evoke the printing process, which was developed by Johannes Gutenberg, and it is supposed to be based on the demonstration of a wine press in Strasbourg, which gave him some ideas to develop a printing process he was looking for, based on mobile letters. We also refer to de Rond model, which presents the interest of providing another dimension in addition to goal thinking. Goal thinking can be considered as showing intentionality. And de Rond added the causality, which is based on an analysis of a process, which can be a causal process or a causal process which explain the discovery. And we have the famous example of the discovery of penicillin by Alexander Fleming. And it opens accidentally, in the sense that a mold accidentally contaminated Staphylococcus cultures plate, and Alexander Fleming observed it. Okay, and he noticed that the culture prevented the growth of Staphylococcus. But this is a famous example of what we can say full serendipity. With regard to this framework, we also wanted to develop a reflection which is based on intentionality. As you know, there are debates and different points of view. For example, for Webster, there is no creativity without intentionality, in contrast to Simonto. Thus, for us, serendipity is linked to the issue of intentionality, and in a double dimension. First, intentionality as a dimension related to the goals to be achieved. Intentionality is also linked to the implementation of a process with the aim of achieving a goal. And thus, we design an experiment in order to test to which extent discovery can be considered creative by laypersons, depending on the combination of two factors. The first factor is here. It is related directly to the objective, to the goal to be solved. For instance, the individual can find a goal, an object which corresponds to the goal is trying to reach, and the individual can develop a control process. Thus, this is what we call fully intentional. The individual can reach an object which doesn't correspond directly to the goal he was looking for. But the control process, the process, is controlled. Thus, this is a case of pseudo-serendipity with regard to the goal. We also define two other conditions which are presented as resulting from an uncontrolled process. And thus we define pseudo-serendipity with regard to the process, since the individual can reach the goal he was looking for, and what we call full serendipity in the sense that the individual finds something else than what he was looking for, and it is based on an uncontrolled process. Okay, I hope it's clear. Thus, to give you more precise information about this study, the methods was based on implicit theories in the sense that we present scenarios to lay people. Here you have an example of scenario which correspond to the first condition, what we call with intentionality. Thus, we explain to participants that a pharmacological researcher wants to produce a new drug that is effective in treating headaches. Aware of the importance of following procedures to make scientific discoveries, it chooses to mix different chemical components together by developing a specific and controlled procedure. A compound results from the mixtures of its components. This compound is tested. It is recognized by other experts in pharmacology as being completely new and very effective in treating headaches. But here you have an example of scenario. The other scenarios are based on the same kinds of story, and in each scenario, we explain that the result is judged completely new and very effective by experts in the domain. Okay, but what we are interested in is the perception that lay people have on the creativity. For this study, we had 211 participants who were recruited by online survey. The design of the experiment is based on a 2x2 between participants design, in the sense that participants are provided with scenarios that show what we call full serendipity, in the sense that the process is uncontrolled and the goal that is reached was unsought. Full intentionality, in the sense that the process was controlled and the goal which is reached is the one which was looked for. And we have two kinds of pseudo-serendipity, one which is based on the process, in the case of an uncontrolled process, and one which is based on the goal, in the case of an unsolved goal. After reading the scenarios, participants have to judge the perceived creativity of the individual and the perceived creativity of the production. In this talk, we are going to focus on the perceived creativity of the individual. Okay, thus, as you can see here, we obtained, in fact, a main effect of the variable which is related to the process. Indeed, the perceived creativity of the individual, which is here, is judged significantly higher in the case of a controlled process than in the case of an uncontrolled process. This is very significant, and we have an effect size of 0.23. We didn't obtain a significant effect concerning the variable related to the goal on the perceived creativity of the individual, and we observed an interaction between the two variables, process and goal, which appears to be significant, although the effect size can be considered as small. Anyway, this interaction shows that when the process is uncontrolled, lay participants consider the individual as more creative than when he or she reaches the goal that was sought. When the process is controlled, lay participants consider the individual as more creative when he or she reaches another goal than the one he or she was looking for. Thus, this can allow us to reflect on the unexpectedness of a result. Okay, we will come back later. Based on these reasons, thus I present you only a part of them. It appears that to be considered as creative, it is necessary to engage in a process aiming to achieve a specific goal, even if the results of the achieved goal is different from what was intended. Therefore, the component referring to the implementation of processes in achieving a goal is essential to be recognized as creative, at least by lay people. And this can be discussed in relation to agentivity. This experiment also allowed us to reflect on variables related to serendipity. And here we can present you a model which highlights relationships between the three variables: goal seeking, process, and recognition. Todd talked previously about observation, and he evoked comments supposed to have been made by Pasteur, for instance. Okay. Thus, in this model, as you can see, two of these variables are based on a relation of necessary condition. Here we consider that the process can be developed only when there is a goal to reach. Another interesting point in the model is that creativity is related to the agentivity of the individual, as pointed out by Wendy Ross or by Frédéric Vallée-Tourangeau. Here you find the discovery of the Velcro, which was already evoked, and it is only based on a pattern recognition of something unexpected which appeared in the environment, and it was observed by Georges de Mestral. In contrast, in the theory of relativity proposed by Albert Einstein, everything is intentional, and the agentivity can be considered at the highest level. Indeed, there was a defined goal, the process was engaged toward the goal, and the pattern recognition occurred as it was looked for. And you can have here other levels of agentivity which correspond to the different example, famous example here too. Of course, this model could be refined, and especially instead of taking into account a dichotomy, for example, a controlled process or uncontrolled process, we could reflect on a continuum. For example, between what was intended and the achieved goal, which can be more or less close to the intended goal. To complete this talk, I can refer to some comments which were made by professionals in the previous study, which was conducted in collaboration with Vlad Glaveanu, Todd Lubart, and other colleagues. And we observed that designers are conscious of the importance of observation and recognition. They say that inspiration can come from everywhere. They said that you have to keep your antennas out, to be attentive, to be open to the world, and also to collect things and store them in what they call a bank of ideas. Okay, and thus I think it is related to some challenges about observation and recognition. And we could possibly think of ways to help professionals to observe, identify, and recognize not thought finding as relevant for something. And even if these observations or findings are considered as not relevant at the current time, we could maybe think of ways to help professionals. Why not possibly maybe lay participants, I don't know, to consider this observation or findings are possibly relevant in the future in relationship with Giovanni Corazza's dynamic definition of creativity, and also to consider these observations or findings as a potential source of inspiration in order to pursue and explore the possible. I thank you for your attention. And if you have questions, don't hesitate. And Nicola, who is with us, will be also able to answer.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. There were so many interesting things in there. I really, I wish we had, as always, far longer to explore them. Does anybody have any questions in the chat that they're interested in? So Gerard has said, as a comment to Todd's, but now fits also to Nathalie's presentation. According to Krishnamurti, I mean, Gerard, do you want to unmute and ask it yourself? Are you happy to have your voice on YouTube? You've done a presentation, so I guess it will be all right.
Yeah, no, it's a too long a comment, but I was thinking about insight and Krishnamurti, and so you can read what I just put here. It's maybe too long to discuss it here in this moment, but it fit very well what Nathalie just quoted from Vlad's, that inspiration comes from everywhere. And now if you think about insight being not material, so from where does it come? So it's an open discussion comment here.
So yes, you're right, but the mind should be open, prepared to the possibilities of happenings. For me, it is a matter of rather preparing, fostering the environment or situation to support the emergence and reveal that of sagacity and insight. And with that, serendipity can become salient. So yeah, I think that's, I really liked in I really liked your findings that it's not that the creativity comes from the intention of what you're doing rather than from necessarily from the final product. I would have, and I think that's really interesting when I think about some of the random processes that go on in artistic creativity. So if we think about some of the work from sort of like from the surrealists and different people, and there's name escapes me right now, but there's an artist who allowed mice to run all over his art studio through sawdust and things, and what came out of it was the artistic piece, and we consider it creative because of his intention behind it. So is that the sort of thing that you're unpicking as well? Do you think that your findings would reflect?
Yes, I think so. I don't know whether Nicolas wishes to answer to or to comment on it.
I'm totally agree with what was saying by Wendy here. Just if you have any supplementary question, I will be glad to answer it.
Okay, so I guess then if I could follow up with a question then before we move, we've got one more recorded video before our next keynote. Do you think then, what about if, so we have intentionality and then we have unexpected finding. Do you think it would also be if you then had unexpected finding but an intentional acting on that unexpected finding? So if you like, there's a sandwich really. Do you think that what you do with the unexpected finding, how important do you think that would be to people's understanding of creativity? So you knock over a paint pot, for example, that's something that I know Weisberg's interest, uses quite. You knock over a paint pot.
Excuse me, Wendy, could you speak slowly for me?
Sorry. So at the moment, it's the presentation is intentional action, unexpected happening, and the creativity is linked to the prior unintentional action. But what I was wondering was, could you have no action, unexpected happening, and then intentional action afterwards? Do you think it would, if you saw the intentionality there, do you think that would also fit the model?
Okay.
Yes. I will answer first if you want, Nathalie. It's the case for Demestre, for example. The idea came when he see the seeds stuck on him, but after he did that, he put a real process of studying what he see, and this moment of idea of enlightening drive him to put a more important process after. So our model is just a model of the beginning of the enlightenment. After we had the enlightenment, there are several processes need to be put in place to get what is interesting. It was the case for Alexander Fleming, for example, because he didn't see really what was important when the mole get into his culture chambers, and it was other people after him which sets some processes and finally developed the penicillin as we used it here. So it's always just the beginning of a long and the long process which will come after.
Yeah. Could I add in something?
Absolutely.
I just wanted to say that some people may be aware there was a study of contemporary scientists who were the same time as Fleming, and they noticed that about 20 scientists who were working on bacteria and so forth at the time had noted in their notebooks that something had come and destroyed the culture in their dishes, and they threw it away. And those were scientists who were like Fleming, who could have taken note of what happened, but they just said something messed up my study. I had to throw away my samples. And it was Fleming it was not a rare thing that the first time ever in the world, this thing landed on a dish and destroyed and ate up what was in the dish. I'm just saying. So this same chance event already happened at least 20 times and was noted in people's notebooks that they had to restart what they were studying. So maybe Nathalie and Nicolas want to react to that fact, historical fact.
I think it's directly related to what Todd you described previously, the fact of being able to observe and to identify something as relevant.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's also related to the challenges I evoked at the end of the talk. And the point is how to help people to see something that other people are not able to see. But this is a big avenue for research, maybe.
Exactly. It's not only sufficient just to be lucky to see it, because those scientists, they saw something had messed up their sample, but you have to decide to do something about what you saw and not literally throw it in the garbage can. Anyway,
and that's partly to do with resources. There's a paper called The Case of the Floppy-Eared Rabbits by Fox and Barber, in which they see two scientists that make the same observation about rabbits' ears going floppy, and one has the time and the space to follow up, and they, you know, they haven't got a particular project on at the moment. They've got a few rabbits left over from their last project. All of those, the resources, really what comes through that paper is if you have the resources to follow something up, which then goes right back to what we heard right at the start of the day from Monica about whether serendipity is differently experienced by different groups depending on your position, your power position, and the resources that you have to enact these things. Nicolas and Nathalie, that was a fantastic presentation. Thank you so much, and really, really fantastic research. Thank you. Thank you for that. So I'm going to give you a no real round of applause, but it's only me, so it feels much more virtual.